Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen, and today I wanted to do a troubleshooting session with you with a patient that I am working with who has PCOS. She's a 25-year-old, and I wanted to go over her Dutch test because if you are a female who has been diagnosed with PCOS or you haven't, but you have androgen excess, so that would be potentially female pattern hair or male pattern hair loss or thinning hair or inappropriate spots of hair like facial growth or chest growth or back hair growth. You have oily skin, acne, irritability, rage. Maybe you have adrenal excess. You need to do a Dutch test because the Dutch test will tell us about what's going on with your hormones from a urinary analysis, and that's what the Dutch test stands for. It stands for a dried urinary total cortisol test. And it's going to tell us about the hormones that are manufactured in the adrenals, and it's going to tell us about the hormones that are manufactured in the female tissue. And that's really, really great. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look, and we're going to look at the graph. So this is your daily free cortisol pattern. And I find that when you do a saliva sample, that is the only thing they are measuring, which really represents only 1 to 3% of your total cortisol that you produce in a given day. Whereas your total cortisol that you produce in a given day is what we call your metabolized cortisol. And so that's what we're looking at right here, is we're looking at your metabolized cortisol. And so you can see that it's fairly low. So metabolized cortisol answers the question, how much cortisol are you producing to get you through the entire day, to get you through your stressors? Whereas your free cortisol represents how much do you have at any one time that's available for use. So the example I use is if you had someone follow you around at the end of the day, and this would represent how much money you spent to get you through the day. And you need a certain amount of money to get through the day to be able to buy your lunch and buy your food. And you can see that of the total amount that that this person has, 5,400, they're only at about 3,100. So they're sort of flatlining in how much cortisol they have to get them through the day. But when you look at their 24-hour free cortisol, that's where you can really see that they have no excess or they have no free cortisol. They have no money in their wallet at any one time to deal with the stressors. And that's a huge, huge problem. In this case, this patient is 25 years old, and you can see that she has, now we're looking at her DHEA, and we can see that her DHEA is at about 3,000, and for a 25-year-old it should be in the 800 to 2,500. So she's really, really high. So the way I would summarize this is, here's someone who is not really getting a lot of cortisol production through the entire day. So she's not meeting her entire demands to produce cortisol to keep up with her stressors and her lives and her inflammation and the demands of her daily activities. Her free cortisol is very low, so the amount that she has at any one time is also very low. But you can see her DHEA is very, very high, meaning she's sort of recruiting, she's cashing in her savings account, she's cashing in her mutual savings bonds to be able to fund her day-to-day activity. And really, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be just using our bank account and the money we have on hand and not dipping into our reserves. And so we can tell that this is a chronic stress response because we can also see from the slope of the graph, she should be somewhere in that area there, but she is down, oops, we can see that she is down here. And so that is a chronic stress response. The other thing we can look at is we can look at the sum of 8 metabolites of estrogen. And we can see that she is just off the charts. You can see that she should be between 27 and 62, and she's 157. So when you compare that to her progesterone levels, we can see a total estrogen dominance. But we can also see that her testosterone is very, very high too. So we're starting to get a lot of information from this. So let's go to the next page. And what we can do is we can see how well she's breaking down her estrogen levels. So the first thing that we see is that her total DHEAS, which is down here, for a 25-year-old should be between 30 to 350. And she's at 49. So even though her DHEA, which is a representation of other testosterones, was very high, her DHEAS by itself, her sulfated version, was low. So we can see that it's actually her androgen excess that's contributing to a lot of her hormonal dysregulation. We can see that her testosterone is 13.6, and when she breaks testosterone down, she breaks it into androsterone or ethylocolonolone. And we can see that her 5-alpha activity is very, very upregulated. If we have a patient who has PCOS and they have high 5-alpha activity, it means that that breakdown is going down the more androgenic pathway. And that's a huge problem. What we want to try to do is give her a supplement that blocks that activity and comes down more the preferential pathway, which would be the 5-beta activity. And good supplements that you can use for that would be saw palmetto, and bioflavonoids are good for that as well. Then we can see the reason why her estrogen excess is so high is because she's over aromatizing. She's really bringing a lot of that testosterone down into E1, down into E2, and down into E3. And that will cause excess estrogen strain on phase 1 of liver metabolism. However, she's doing a very, very good job. She's coming down the more protective pathway, and she should be doing that 70% of the time, and she's at 71% of the time. So she's doing a good job in her phase 1 estrogen metabolism, but when we look at phase 2 estrogen metabolism, we really want to see the 2-methoxy be at least as half as the 2-OH. And if it's not, then we know she has a problem with her phase 2 of estrogen metabolism. And in fact, that's what we're seeing here, is we're seeing a really low methylation activity. So she could have a COMT variant, she can have an MTHFR or MTR, or other upstream stressors or epigenetic and genetic components that aren't allowing her to detoxify estrogen effectively. And the fact is, she has so much estrogen that her phase 1 works well, her phase 2 doesn't work well. That's going to create a lot of inflammatory metabolic byproducts, and that further will cause breakdown of her hormones. The last thing that we're looking at here is her free cortisol and her free cortisone pattern. Cortisone represents her inactive form, and cortisol represents her active form. And her body is going into a stress response saying, hey, we don't have very much cortisol to get us through the day, let alone free cortisol. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to upregulate the amount of free cortisol so that it's more available for use. So anyways, I just wanted to give you a couple of key points. The couple of key points is that her testosterone metabolism is just going down the wrong way. She has too much testosterone, and her phase 2 of estrogen metabolism is very, very slow and sluggish. We would probably recommend a little bit of DIM or 3-carbon-indole, which could lower her estrogen excess. We would also recommend saw palmetto or bioflavonoids to reduce her 5-alpha activity. And then at the end of the day, we really want to see, why is her free cortisol and why is her total metabolized cortisol so low? And that could be things like infections, viruses, dental problems, could be mold exposures, a lot of those things. So what I would suggest is you look into doing a Dutch test. Right now I have a special. If you want to do a Dutch test with me, typically the prices are $3.99. I'm doing it for a special price of $2.50, and that will also require you to do a interpretation, and my interpretation is $149. So for right now, for $399, you can get your Dutch test done for you and an interpretation. But I'm only going to do this for the first 20 people that respond. I have over 18,000 people on this page, so make sure you inbox me or you reply that you want me to do this special for you, and we can get your Dutch test sorted out and then figure out what direction we want to go in terms of nutritional support. Hope that's really helpful. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. Hope you enjoyed this Dutch review for a PCOS patient, and I look forward to helping you with your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Thank you so much. Hello everyone, my name is Dr.